It was a cold autumn afternoon in a quiet American town. The kind of day when the wind whispered through the trees, scattering golden leaves across empty sidewalks. Inside Grayson's bakery, the smell of freshly baked bread wrapped around every corner, comforting yet bittersweet. Matthew Turner, a 37-year-old single father, stood by the counter, holding his daughter Lily's small hand. He had been here many times before. It was their favorite Saturday ritual. But today, something felt different. The woman behind the counter, a young cashier named Emma, looked pale and anxious. Her light brown hair was braided neatly, but her eyes were swollen, as though she hadn't slept in days. She tried to smile as Lily handed her a few coins for the cookies, but her hands were shaking so badly that one coin slipped from her grasp and clattered on the counter. Matthew's brow furrowed. It wasn't the tremor of cold. The bakery was warm. It was something deeper. Pain, fear, something she was trying to hide behind that trembling smile. And in that brief moment when their eyes met, Matthew saw something that felt hauntingly familiar, the same exhaustion he had seen in his own reflection years ago when he was trying to survive after his wife's death. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us spread stories that remind us what humanity truly means. Matthew hesitated, unsure whether to say something. The line behind him had cleared, and the small bell over the bakery door jingled softly as another customer left. Emma quickly wiped her eyes, pretending to check the register. She whispered, "That'll be $5.25, her voice trembling as much as her hands. He handed her the cash but didn't move away. Something deep within him refused to ignore what he'd just seen. He'd learned, through his own years of loss, that sometimes a simple, "Are you okay?" can mean more than 1,000 grand gestures. When she looked up again, her lips trembled, and for a second, he thought she might burst into tears right there. But she only forced another smile and turned away to wrap Lily's cookies. Behind her, through the glass office window, the bakery manager, an older man with a stern face, stood watching with folded arms. Emma's eyes flickered nervously toward him before she handed over the small white paper bag. "Thank you," she whispered. Matthew noticed the faint redness around her wrists, marks that looked like she had been clutching something too tightly, or maybe from something else entirely. He didn't ask, not yet, but as he took Lily's hand and turned to leave, the sound of a muffled sob reached his ears. He stopped mid-step. Outside, the wind carried the sweet scent of cinnamon and sugar, but Matthew's heart felt heavy. He looked down at Lily, who was staring up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy," she said softly. Why was the lady sad? He didn't know what to say, but that question stayed with him long after they walked away. For the next few weeks, Matthew and Lily returned to the bakery every Saturday. Sometimes Emma was there, sometimes not. When she was, she tried to appear cheerful, but Matthew could see right through the mask. Her hands still trembled, her eyes still darted toward the manager's window every few minutes. And one afternoon, when Lily accidentally dropped a cookie and Emma rushed to pick it up, Matthew saw a small bruise on her wrist. Something was wrong. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Matthew sat in his small kitchen staring at the steam curling from his coffee. He had promised himself years ago never to get involved in anyone's private pain again. When his wife, Claire, had passed away from cancer, he had shut the world out completely. But something about Emma stirred the part of him that still believed in compassion. He couldn't ignore someone who reminded him so much of his own lost battles. So the next morning, he returned. To the bakery alone. The bell chimed softly as he entered. Emma looked startled to see him. It was early, too early for most customers. The manager wasn't there yet. For a long moment, they just stood there in silence before she finally whispered, "You shouldn't be here so early. We're not fully open." "I know," Matthew said quietly. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes filled instantly, and she turned away, pretending to straighten a tray of croissants. Her shoulders trembled. He didn't press. He simply stood there until she finally whispered, "I'm sorry. I just don't know what to do anymore." That was all she said before rushing to the back, leaving him standing by the counter, confused, helpless, but certain that something much deeper was breaking behind those walls she'd built. A few days later, Matthew got a call from the bakery's number. It was Emma. Her voice was soft, trembling, barely audible. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I didn't know who else to call. My manager, he's been yelling at me again. I'm scared to go back tomorrow." Matthew's heart clenched. "Where are you right now?" "At the park near the river." He found her sitting on a bench, her apron still on, eyes red from crying. The late afternoon sun shimmered on the water, painting gold ripples across the surface. And there, she told him everything. Her husband had left her 2 years ago, taking their savings and leaving her buried in debt. She'd moved to the small town to start over, taking the bakery job because it was all she could find. But the manager, Mr. Collins, had turned out to be manipulative, threatening to fire her whenever she made a mistake, withholding paychecks for errors that didn't exist, and humiliating her in front of customers. She couldn't afford to lose the job, not with rent overdue and her sick mother needing medication. As she spoke, her voice cracked over and over until she could no longer hold back the sobs. Matthew sat beside her quietly, his chest tight with anger and empathy. He'd known pain, but not this kind, the kind that traps someone alive inside fear. He promised her she didn't have to face it alone. Over the next week, he contacted a local legal aid service and helped Emma file a complaint against the manager. It wasn't easy. She was terrified, doubting every step, but Matthew stood by her. Lily, too, started leaving little handmade cards for Emma whenever they visited the bakery, drawings of smiling faces and words like "You're brave." The bakery eventually conducted an internal review. The manager was dismissed, quietly, without scandal, but justice had been done. Emma stayed, promoted to assistant supervisor, with the respect she deserved. One quiet morning a month later, Matthew stopped by with Lily again. The bakery smelled brighter somehow, lighter, freer. Emma stood behind the counter, her braid glinting in the morning sun, her hands steady at last. When she saw them, her face lit up, not with the forced smile of survival, but with genuine gratitude. She handed Lily a cookie, winked, and said, "On the house." Matthew smiled back. "Your hands aren't shaking anymore," he said softly. She looked down at them and nodded. "No," she whispered, "not anymore." There was a silence between them, not awkward but peaceful. The kind that only exists between people who've been through the storm and come out stronger on the other side. As Matthew and Lily left, the little girl looked back and waved. Emma waved too, her eyes glistening. But this time, it wasn't from sadness, it was from hope. Weeks turned into months, and Emma became a part of their lives. They met for Sunday picnics, shared stories about loss and healing, and built a quiet friendship rooted in kindness and understanding. Matthew often thought back to that first day, the trembling hands, the silent pain he almost walked past. It reminded him that, sometimes, the smallest act of noticing can change a life forever. And maybe, just maybe, the universe had brought them together not just to heal her, but to remind him that love, in all its unexpected forms, always finds its way back to those who have lost it. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that remind the world of compassion, courage, and second chances. Special request: tell us in the comments, what's one moment of kindness that changed your life? We'd love to hear your story.